Hey, soldiers, the bastards in Washington, D.C., the bureaucrats and elected officials, they're about to tell an insidious lie. A lie that, if you believe it, will certainly jeopardize your march toward financial independence.
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is. If is means is and never has been, that's one thing. If it means there is none, that was a completely true statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, this lie has to do with the definition of recession. Now, we've done video upon video forecasting a recession under the widely accepted definition that came out in 1974 and was popularized by the economist Julius Shishkin. Now, ever since 1974, so almost 50 years, we've been comfortable with the definition of a recession being 2 consecutive quarters or 6 straight months of negative GDP growth. Well, now the White House, knowing that we're going into a recession, that we are in a recession, especially since the Atlanta Fed came out with their report and said we can expect negative GDP, negative 2% GDP for the second quarter. So that's the textbook definition of a recession. Now, all of a sudden, the White House, the media, is engaged in a campaign to change the definition of recession. They want to go in and they want to make you believe that this isn't happening. This is, guys, you've got to go and watch the movie, read the book, 1984. But for expediency's sake, go ahead and watch the movie. It's a grim tale about a dystopian future, a future in which the government has this thing called the Ministry of Truth, and they basically lie constantly. And the real truth is understood as misinformation, just like here in our world. So if you call the recession 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, which we have been doing since 1974, then that's going to be misinformation. Might get you flagged on Facebook and all these other social media platforms. Now, let's dig a little deeper. A recession, this is Investopedia. Now, notice how they've kind of morphed with the times, but I do give them credit for one thing you'll see in a minute. A recession is a macroeconomic term that refers to a significant decline in general economic activity in a designated region. It had been typically recognized as 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline, as reflected by GDP. Okay? So they freely admit that this is what it was. Okay? And then they go on to say that now the National Bureau of Economic Research, which officially declares recessions, says the 2 consecutive quarters of decline in real GDP are not how it's defined anymore. And why is that? Because we have a corrupt government that would prefer to stem the tide against all these losses they're going to have in Congress come November. So they're going to try to make the economy appear to look better than it is. Now, here's one of the dangers with this. It's getting to a point where we can't trust these economic numbers that are coming out of the government. I already went over, and I'll tag you on this later in this episode. We already did the jobs video where we showed you that a significant portion of the new jobs that were created, okay, in June were second jobs. So more people are having to go out and work 2 jobs in order to make ends meet. We walk you through that in that video and show you that it has increased. Okay, so the media, the government, they came out and crowed about all of these new jobs that were created. Did you hear them say anything about the amount of those jobs that were second jobs? Okay, I didn't. I had to dig into the numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to get that information. And that's the value of this channel. Being a former lobbyist, I know how to do that kind of work, and I want to bring it to you so that you have the truth. But when it's reported in the media, they're going to go, just like Investopedia, they're going to go with this new definition. So what is the new definition of recession? So now this National Bureau of Economic Research, who had been comfortable defining a recession as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, they have been comfortable with that since 1974. Okay, every recession was called based on that since then. But now their new definition of recession, they're calling it a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Notice how ambiguous that is, okay? We went from something specific like 2 consecutive quarters to they're saying a few months. Who decides that? Who decides if it's 5 or 6 or 7? They also say that they're mixing in GDP with real income, employment. We've already seen how they messed around and played around with the employment numbers. The more data they add into this, the more ambiguous they can make it, the more statistics they throw in, they can make it say anything they want. So you're out here operating under the false impression that everything's peachy keen. You know, there are no problems. The economy is roaring, okay, roaring along just fine. Ignore those gas prices that have come down 43 cents but are still up $2 over a year ago. $2 year over year increase. Ignore all that. So you're being lied to consistently, constantly. We're getting into a point where we cannot trust these numbers because they're not being accurately reported. They're being manipulated, just like we saw not only with the jobs numbers, but we also see it with inflation. We've been over that time and time again, and why the United States government wants to report that lower number, 9.1%, instead of 17%. Okay, we did a video on that. I'll tag you on that one also. But I just want you to be straight up knowledgeable about what's going on. You really should turn the news off. They're not telling you the truth because none of these news stations are standing up to these people and saying, wait just a damn minute, okay? Now, we've defined recession as this for 50 years. Explain to us why now we have to change the definition. Why is it that when a certain individual is in office and nothing is going right for this individual, do we now have to play this game where we don't recognize the reality of the situation?
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. I agree.
None of these news organizations are doing that. Furthermore, the politicians, the questions that are being asked, it's like a little game that they play in Washington, D.C. I've been there. I know. Anything outside 495, that's the beltway that surrounds Washington, D.C. Anything outside that is like this realm of Neanderthals. We are lesser beings. We are serfs. The power centers of this country are centered in Washington, D.C., Manhattan, and Los Angeles. And everything else, all of the other stuff out there, me, you, everything in between is flyover country. And these people play these games, and it puts your financial future at risk if you believe it. Okay? Because if you think the economy's fine, if you don't understand that most of these jobs that are being created out there are second jobs, if you don't understand that, and I don't want to say most, many of these jobs are second jobs, then you could be making decisions to maybe not put as much away or purchase assets that may be at risk in a true recessionary time, or make a large purchase right now when in fact it's not the best time to do so. There are a host of mistakes that you can make based on bad information. Okay, now there's nothing that's going to stop us soldiers from achieving financial independence. We're going to keep our mindset right, focused on the goal. But we need good intel, okay? And so we've got to tear these numbers apart. So that's what's going on with that. Watch it on the 28th when they come out with this GDP data. They're going to get on the podium behind the White House seal and say we're not. They're going to look you straight in the eye and say we're not in a recession. Damn that. Yeah, we are. If we get another quarter of negative GDP, yeah, we are in a recession. And the macroeconomic forces that surround that fact will continue to act in such a way that you can rely on in terms of making investment decisions, large purchases, and what have you. Just like they come out and lie about that inflation number, well, macroeconomics is a fact. You put money on the street, you're going to get inflation. Okay, the Fed creates more money supply, you're going to get inflation. That is unassailable, and we've seen it happen. Let me drop one other thing on you guys before we get out of here for today. Just want to let you know that the BRICS nations have gone ahead and announced that they're putting together an alternative to the dollar, a global reserve currency. So if you are unaware, we went over this in the last video. The BRICS countries, they are Brazil, Russia, India, China. How could I forget China? And South Africa. And they have come together in an economic cooperation team known as the BRICS, and they are in the process of putting together an alternative to the dollar. As I said, 100,000 reads on most popular articles of the week have described exactly how Russia and China are teaming up to take on the U.S. dollar with their own reserve currency. It's a stunning story, free for all to read. And of course, nobody in the West has noticed or gives a shit about it. And that's so true. But watch that. We'll continue to watch it. We've already done some reporting on how the BRICS nations are moving toward their own reserve currency. Also, remember, just keep this fact in mind. Right now, 59% of global reserves are held in U.S. dollars. 59%. That has been dropping steadily since 2016. And it's going to continue to drop. And once it drops below 50%,
hold on to your butts.
Okay, guys, pay attention to what they're saying, but pay more attention to what they're doing. Watch this video right here. Warren Buffett just did something in these recessionary times that may seem contrary, may seem counterproductive, based on what we all hear at our level from the news media. Check out this video. You're really going to love it. You get a lot out of it. Talk to you soon.